The views and opinions expressed on Cheyenne Today do not necessarily reflect those of the staff and management of KFBC Cheyenne.
(8:13) on this Tuesday morning. Welcome everybody into Cheyenne Today, brought to you by Black Hills Energy. Kerry Hayden alongside with you on this Tuesday morning. Any questions or comments you have for our guest today, you can text those in 630-2266. You can always give us a call as well on the Fat Boys Tire and Auto phone line. That number is 634-1240. We welcome this morning Mr. Brent Bien, who is running for governor today. Lots going on with Brent, so we're glad you made the time to come in and talk to us today. Welcome this morning.
Hey, thank you very much, Kerry. It's nice to be here.
Thanks for coming in and chatting with us. We're talking about your meet and greet that's coming up tonight here
at
in
the
the
office
capital
at 6
city.
o'clock. That's right.
And of course, you're doing these to kind of let people kind of know where you stand, your goals for the Cowboy State too, as you start this campaign again. And so everybody is welcome to come to this meet and greet then, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's open to anybody who wants to come. And I look forward to seeing whoever shows up and talking through whatever issues they might have and going from there. You bet.
You know, you've been doing these across the state.
I have.
What are some of the major things that people have come to chat with you about that they would maybe like to see addressed as a new governor?
Oh, well, I tell you, taxes right now is near and dear to just about everybody. I think taxes, agriculture, we're seeing a lot of that, you know, with a lot of our lands being kind of swallowed up to globalist interests. Mm-hmm. And but it's a matter of you know, I always say returning Wyoming to the people, re-empowering the people, because that's where our strength is. And one of the best ways to do that is simply, return the taxes to the taxpayer, really. So that's what we're really looking at doing here when we get down to Cheyenne. You
know, you ran in 2022,
that's right.
So you must have learned a lot from that campaign, right?
Yes, I did. That's right.
As anybody should. So what are some of the things maybe that you are taking from that campaign on into this new one?
Well, I'll tell you this, and this has been such an incredible experience, because this was never a bucket list thing for me to do. Yeah, I may have mentioned it years and years ago, but you know, being in the Marine Corps for so long and seeing the way the world the way it really is, not that of a tourist, you really appreciate what we have here in America, particularly our liberty. And, you know, coming back here, the whole thing with the COVID, that's what really got me into this thing and our reaction to it, the governor's reaction to it. And then, of course, we had a special session in late 2020 that did really nothing to protect our liberty. So that's what really got me into this thing. But since then, you know, we put a pact together. We ran a ballot initiative to cut residential property tax by 50% of the assessed value, and which will be on the 2026 ballot. And but just meeting so many incredible people around the state. I mean, it's just so incredible. But the question changed. The question evolved from, are you going to do it again, to will you do it again? And that connotes something completely different. And it's one thing if it's just from a few people, but when I started hearing it routinely around the state, it's like, well, holy mackerel, you know, these people are looking for something different. You know, they're looking for something to really return the state to them. Mm-hmm. You know, and it's not give it back, because it was never the government's in the first place. It was kind of taken. And of course the electorate has a responsibility in this too, but it's a matter of returning those powers, I guess, or whatever, back to the folks, and that's what it's really about.
Did that write-in campaign kind of swayed you to maybe go for it again?
You know, that was the craziest thing, because a gal called me the day after the primary in 2022, and she was not happy. She's just such a wonderful friend. And so we talked through a couple of things, and then a few days after that, she said, hey, I'm going to run a write-in campaign for you. And I'm like, I don't have any money to do this, you know. And so it energized this whole base around the state. And, of course, we broke all records for write-ins. But it was one of those things, I think it really showed that people were really in favor of something different, something that's not, you know, there's a lot of nepotism, a lot of cronyism, and that's existent in just about every state government. But I think, you know, the folks are yelling, screaming, whatever you want to call it, and they're not being heard. And it's like, okay, we gotta put this back to the folks.
You mentioned your history as a Marine. For those that maybe aren't familiar exactly with your background, and tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of what brought you to politics today.
Okay. Well, I tell you, I am a native of Wyoming. I was born in Laramie. My father was a Marine Corps officer, then an executive for Mountain Bell in the U.S. West. So I moved around a little bit when we were during my childhood. Came back, went to UW. And then went through the engineering college there. The day I graduated, I was commissioned into the Marine Corps also, and I had no intention of staying in the Marine Corps for 28 and a half years, but it was such an incredible experience. We have such a great country, and so I was an aviator, flew, was involved in all sorts of contingent operations around the world. And then in 2019, I retired as a colonel. 2019, moved to Sheridan. And I will tell you that one of the reasons, although it's a minor reason, that I always kept my residencies because I had a really low number on the back of my license plate on my truck, right? So I always tell people that Steamboat's seen this whole country on the back of my truck.
I love it.
And then again, I was working up at Bighorn Airways, and up in Sheridan, and then of course COVID hit, and then that's kind of the rest of the story. Now I've always kept up on current events, even as a real young, because my folks were so into current events and very, very conservative also. I was very outspoken at UW when I was going, as a young conservative, I guess, and nothing's. My opinions haven't changed. It's just that I'm more resolute in them, just because you have all that years of life experience.
You grow up a little bit, right?
You grow up a little bit. That's right. So I love this state. It is hands down the greatest state in the nation. And my thing with what I've been seeing around the state is people they're kind of downtrodden. And I'm like, what's going on here? And so I keep trying to remind people just who we are. We're Americans. We are Americans. We're Wyoming Americans. We live in the greatest state and the greatest nation in the history of the world, and we have to remember that. And it's because of our freedom that makes us so great. And it's just it's trying to reinstill that confidence of being an American, the greatness of being an American.
One hot topic that we've been hearing about and chatting about, especially in media, is the election integrity here in Wyoming and all that Secretary of State Chuck Gray has done to kind of ensure that. Do you think we're good? Do we need more? Where do you stand on that?
We need more.
Yeah.
There's two avenues here. There's voter integrity, which the Secretary of State has really been addressing, and there's election integrity. And election's more the process, right? Our ES&S voting machines, that's what we use to vote. And everybody's done it who's voted. They've gone in and done that. What we have seen, though, is that they're very difficult to use. And we saw before the last election, both the primary and the general, and also in 2022, all the data that we could get, is that not a single county truly tested them correctly before we voted. So we've had some incredible people who come in here pro bono to the state who are forensic experts when it comes down to computers and those kind of things, and one of them happened to be the only one who's been able to legally break into or hack into one of these systems, and he did it in 7 minutes. I think it was in front of the Pennsylvania legislature. So we've been showing folks, hey, here's the deal. With these, they're susceptible. And we don't know if they're accurately counting or not. We don't know that because we're not allowed to audit these, and we've never really done any sort of paper ballot audits on what's going on here, and to the extent that need to happen. And so after showing, and of course we always provide a solution, and one of the solutions is this method of hand counting, that and there's different methods out there. And the folks have seen that, and they're like, holy cow, how come we're not doing this? I mean, it's so simple. And it's not subjective, because there's so many checks and balances in there when we actually do the tabulation of these sample hand ballots when we put people through. So we've trained a lot of people around the state in every single county, just so we have that cadre of folks that know how to do it, regardless of what hand counting method, if we ever go down that road. But I will tell you this, is I know what's going on with the whole process, and I'm not comfortable with it. And I do believe that hand tabulation of the cast paper ballots should be our primary method of counting ballots.
UW alumni, you mentioned, right?
I am.
All right. I want to get your thoughts on the legislature's, I think it was $40 million cuts to the university. Your thoughts on this, Brent?
Well, we have to make cuts. We have to make cuts. the budget, the spending that we're doing, particularly the spending, it's just unsustainable. The trajectory, we see it where it's going. And I think, that's one thing with leadership that we're missing is leadership is doing those things that need to be done regardless of whether it's popular or not. And I think this falls into that. And I think we got to realize that $40 million is really roughly about 6% of UW revenue anyway. It's pretty small. And of course, their student population is down, some too. And we're not seeing any marked increase in graduation rates, those kind of things. And we're also seeing some of those things. And the way I look at UW, because I went through there. It's like that's my UW, and we gotta focus on the things that made us a great land grant university, that type of curricula, and really focus on that, not some of these other extraneous type of curricula that are out there that have nothing to do with Wyoming, and they're kind of along the woke lines out there. We just got to get rid of that stuff, or at least the taxpayer shouldn't be paying for it, Yeah. And so no, I think it's overdue. We just have to do that and look at it, and we need to do that all the way across government. We really do.
The budget session has begun.
It has.
I think it even began a little bit last night after the State of the State.
That's right.
And so anything that you're particularly kind of keeping a close eye on this budget session?
I am. There were quite a few tax bills that were there, tax cut type, tax relief. Mm-hmm. Okay. And then, of course, what we just talked about are elections. Mm-hmm. And so far, we've seen that it doesn't look like many of these are going to make it to the floor because you need a 2/3 vote, to get it to the floor. So a little disappointed there, but we're going to keep pushing. There's a lot of these bills that I've been a part of, or at least taken a look at before they go, and the legislators pushing them. My hat's off to them for doing it. And so we'll see. We'll see what happens today and throughout the entire budget session. Yeah.
You mentioned your meet and greet coming up tonight over there at the office.
Yes.
I believe it starts at 6 o'clock
That's
tonight.
right.
A chance for people to come and get to know you, learn about your goals as governor and running this campaign. You mentioned these at the very beginning of the show, but talk to me a little bit more about a few of these goals that you have in mind as we go through this campaign season.
Well, I always say that this campaign is about returning Wyoming to the people. And that's specifically taxes to the taxpayer, education to the parents, elections to the voters, agriculture to the growers, and energy back to Wyoming. And it comes down to the consent of the governed and listening to the folks. So we're looking at, and I always say make Wyoming number one. And what that really means is that we should be leading this nation across the board. I mean, in all of it, education, everything. We should be doing that because we should accept nothing less than excellence in governance, and not just to be competitive, but to be the top in the state. And so much of this deals with leadership. It really does. And my intent there is to bring back principled conservative leadership, discipline, and accountability to Cheyenne. We have to do it. Mm-hmm. We have to do that. And that's one thing I think that people are saying is that, hey, there's not much accountability when it comes down to it. We don't routinely do audits. I mean, we haven't done a statewide budgetary audit since 1989, and it is to give people not just tax relief, but tax reform. Let's go back in there, Title 39, whatever it is, and actually rewrite this in favor of the people, or update it in favor of the people. So it's one of those things that may not be popular with some, but it's things that we need to do, to re-empower the folks, because they can spend their money so much better than the government can, and really to get the government off the necks of the folks.
I think even last election, accountability was a big word. It was tossed around a lot. Transparency, accountability. Right. Folks wanted that. They wanted to see that. And so to have you say, I haven't forgot about it. I'm going to bring that back. I'm going to hold some folks accountable. That has to be a huge asset in your campaign for governor. Well,
it's one of those things as a Marine officer, anytime I would take over something, whatever it was, I always would want an audit on everything, because that's my zero. That's where my starting point was. And that's what I want to know here. What does it really take to run this state fiscally, and what needs to happen to make that work? What are the essential and non-essential government services? And let's focus on the essential. And of course, government doesn't really have responsibility. The people have responsibility. Government's just a big entity, right? So, and that's why it's getting the people back involved. And then, the accountability wise, I always say, it's trust through transparency and accountability through audit, and that's what needs to happen. And I have every intention of doing that and bringing it back to Cheyenne.
All right. Well, Brent, we are out of time. You are, though, we want to remind folks, coming up, meet and greet tonight at the office, 6
That's
o'clock
right.
here in Cheyenne. Where are you off to next?
Off to Laramie next.
Okay.
And then up to Glen Rock, and then Casper, and then back up to Cody. I'll do my laundry and hit the road again.
Oh, goodness.
So,
well, at least so far the weather's cooperated. So
It
you
has.
haven't had
It
to
has.
drive through many blizzards going
That's
to
right.
meet and greets, right?
That's right.
Something you can be
That's
grateful
right.
for, I
That's
guess.
right.
All right. Well, Brent, it was a pleasure talking with you. I'm sure we will do this again as we get a little
bet.
bit closer and get you back on here and go into dive a little bit more on some of those issues that are meaning a lot to our voters, and we'll do that next time you're on, all right?
That sounds great. And folks, if you have any questions, comments, just come to BrentBien.com. We can talk through that stuff, and just let me know what's on your mind.
Sounds great. All right. Thank you for the time this morning.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Kerry.
it. All right. Stay with us. More Cheyenne Today coming up right after this.
From the Bighorn Peaks to the Powder River line, we're the backbone folks, we're the working kind. We don't need a lecture from a distant hill, we need a leader with an ironclad will.